This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
This is one of the most common things that many of us say, and they can apply to almost any situation in our lives. But people say, I'm stuck. I feel like I'm stuck. Things aren't moving forward, whether it's your job, personal aspect of your life, whatever it might be. What's holding us there in that place? Why we're stuck and we're not moving forward? Just one of those things that many of us say that he can help with, and so much more as a psychotherapist and life coach. And he helps people connect with themselves and find the best version of themselves to move their lives forward. So much to talk about with him as we bring him in on the show. He is Jeffrey Starbuck joining us today. How are you?
I'm really great. I'm looking forward to our conversation, and thanks for having me here. And this is a real good opportunity for me and for many people.
So I believe a lot of us sometimes aren't sure with the qualification titles. Psychotherapist. How do you define that?
Well, good question. In one sense, one way to define it is I'm licensed. I have an LCSW in New Jersey, licensed clinical social worker, and so I'm licensed there, and I'm licensed in New York, and that doesn't mean I can't practice elsewhere. But so somebody who has a certain degree and has a license, so yeah, but. And somebody who calls themselves a psychologist could be that, or a psychiatrist could be that, an MD. So I don't know if that helps a little bit in that.
So you have an interesting view of things and qualifications because you're a psychotherapist and a life coach. So how about we take a look at the difference between those two? I'm sure they work hand in hand depending on the goals of somebody, but how about that?
Sure. Well, I realized as I was going along as a therapist and as a clinical therapist, I realized that part of that I was already doing a certain amount of life in terms of what the people who do that I took some courses and I began using that phrase, that title. So, and the life coach is really something which doesn't necessarily have a specific that I'm aware of legal meaning, as far as that goes. So and the difference, I don't know, sometimes I'm not sure what the difference is, because the main thing that I'm interested in is helping people, as you said, be the best version of themselves. And that is, I don't focus on pathology as such, although, so I'm not really involved that much in a medical model, although there is a medical aspect to it, so to speak. To me, that those have kind of in blended or blurred, and I think that would be that way for other life, and not all life coaches would say that or would call themselves psychotherapists. So,
would you say that when it's the psychotherapist part of your work that you're looking more at why we do what we do, maybe how it ties back to maybe our childhood, how some of those things are learned or in our subconscious, and then as we look at the coaching level, the life coaching side of things, that it's more of a action items. These are things that you can use to move your life forward. These are the tools that can help you get to your goals. Would that sound, in a broad sense, reasonably accurate?
Sure. Yes. Although I think a lot of people who call themselves just psychotherapists or therapists would be able to use what you just said in a sense. the idea is action. It's to because people come because they're, you mentioned being stuck earlier, because in some way or other they feel stuck, and they need to become unstuck. Why? So that they can act in life, so that they can move forward, so that
Hmm.
they and deal with those things in internally and externally that are blocking, that they feel are blocking their movement.
Yeah, you've been referred to as a Renaissance healer. How do you define that?
I, I define that that was a teacher described me that way, and I took it on. I understood that she was saying kind of in a Renaissance person, meaning referring to more than just a regular therapist, but yeah, it's kind of poetic and and there's, I don't know if there are any other people who call themselves that. I call myself that, uh,
Hmm.
and it is that. And considering a lot of things, what would be called spiritual things, what could be called spiritual things, and what I call, I work with energetics, so to speak. And to me, life is energy. And so I bring a lot of ideas and practices into the mix as I go along. I hope that gives some answer to your question.
Well, I yes, and I think part of that that term may be because you also harness the power of uh, Asian principles to help heal, like qigong, yoga, types of yoga, things like that. Then you blend it with life coaching and also as a psychotherapist. But maybe that's where it is. That's the Renaissance part.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How did this all come together for you, Jeffrey?
How did it all come together? That's a good question. I have, well, depends on how far back I want to go.
Well, your affinity for learning
Right.
this, helping people, go as far back as you feel.
Well, what happened was that in my late adolescence, I was exploring, and as I in high school and then going into college, I was exploring um, a question of identity, and not in terms of doubt about, but like what am I? What is life? What are we here for? I was looking at those kind of perennial, what I call sometimes the perennial questions,
Mm.
and I came to some ideas, some conclusions, but they've always been moving, or conclusions not fixed. And then I took I took a course, I think my freshman year, called Philosophies of the East, and that included uh, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. And so, and of course the professor had a big influence on me, and I sort of and then at some point I got interested in yoga, in physical, what is now known as hatha yoga, which is, that's not really what yoga is, but it's an aspect of yoga. Um, and so and I went that way, and then I began to, it sort of moved me in the direction of, well, how can I apply this in the world other than just like
Hmm.
teaching about the yoga classes or meditation classes? Well, and I sort of thought of being, I sort of was propelled, as I say, into being a um, to being a therapist, because that was a way of working with the mind and working with people, and having the possibility of translating some of and expressing some of these ideas and approaches from the Eastern sort of into a Western network or outlook.
Did it come a point for you where you realize, whoa, this stuff is helping me, meaning you, move my life forward. I've gotten so much out of it. I want to get certified. I want to take all those steps so that I can help others with it.
Yes. Yes, very much. Because I was, it wasn't just for me, it was not just a casual weekend kind of thing. I was deeply affected and moved by my experiences and by things that I read and heard from teachers. I spent time at Ananda Ashram and at other yoga centers, uh, and and I was deeply moved and affected. And yes,
Mm,
definitely I wanted to. And I saw that this can help a lot of people here, like here in America, that in ways that the kind of some of the modalities we have don't really go far enough.
mm. And in Western medicine, we go to the doctor. Typically, you have 11 minutes with the doctor. That's the average. You get a pill, takes care of symptoms. We're not going to the root cause.
That's
And that
right.
could be pretty much anything. And
That's
that's
right.
kind of how we're programmed. So, for some, this is kind of woo, but also at the same time, much of what we're talking about has been around for centuries. This is how they healed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the whole idea of looking at the root cause is central. And that is something which in our Western allopathic, call it medical approach, that isn't really, although things are changing and have changed but that isn't really the basic uh, way of thinking to look at the cause and just because it is my belief and my experience that my belief is a kind of what I call a holistic approach, and the Western allopathic approach is not really holistic. There are Chinese traditional medicine is holistic. Ayurveda
Mm.
practice is more holistic.
And
The
5,000 years old.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and there's a lot of, and that's important. It isn't something that just came. Uh,
Exactly. And we're still talking about it. The same thing with meditation, same thing, even energy healing, Reiki, all of that. It's been around for so long. And this is or was medicine back in the day.
right.
I feel that collectively, we're all finally, not all of us, but many of us are more open to this type of spiritual look at things as opposed to, let's say, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. Even back then, if you said, yeah, you know what, Jeffrey, I'll catch up with you later. I have an appointment with my therapist. And then, yeah, I'll text you when I'm done. People would look at you like, oh, Steve's got something going. Steve's got a problem. All right. And nobody would, even the two words mental health, to say those two words decades ago, you were looked at a certain way. Now, it's like a badge of honor or courage. Yeah, I'm taking care of myself physically and mentally. So I think we're at the time is now for what
Yes,
we're talking about. I truly believe.
absolutely, absolutely. So, uh,
What
and
was the turning point for you? And go back as far back, when you realize this thing, spirituality is changing my life, or maybe just a different awareness, connecting with you. Was there a moment that you remember anything come clear where it's, oh, okay, this is something different now?
there were actually, yeah, that's a very good question. There were actually, I would say, several such moments. And I'm not sure what the earliest would be, but one, I guess I'll reference, well, actually, I'll reference a kind of thinking that I was doing at the time because
Mm,
was um, I was raised as my father was a Methodist minister. Okay, and Methodism in Protestantism is liberal theologically and socially. It's in the liberal end of Protestantism, and which is Christianity, and so there wasn't a hard and fast kind of thing, and there wasn't a, my parents didn't try to control my mind in a certain way, but and so I was kind of encouraged, or it wasn't just by the fact that I wasn't contained or restricted. I was allowed to think, which sounds funny, you know, and I reasoned out that because there was I knew there was Christianity and there was Judaism and there was Islam, and there were different religions. And I reasoned that it cannot be that there's a God, a Christian God, and also a Jewish God, and then a Muslim, an Islamic God that are different. It cannot be. And and I know that Christianity said there's only one God, and I think I sense that the others said that too, and so and that was a kind of a point for me when I just sort of had that thought. It just cannot be, and there are these different approaches, sort of in different names and different languages that approach this. But one metaphor is a mountain that you can say there can be many ways of climbing a mountain. You can climb from the west, from the east, from the northeast, and so on, south. But the top of the mountain is one. There's only one top. Now I'm not attempting to oversimplify it, but anyway, so that was a central point when I realized that, and that was very, very deep. And I actually have an experience that I had, which it was may speak to this also. It was, I didn't write this down at the time. I was, I maybe 15, and we would go to church and sit in the pews and hear my father give this sermon, and there were songs and so on. And I was certainly influenced by that, although I wouldn't say I was gung ho exactly. But one day and my brother was there. I was sitting in the pew, and I was really sleepy. I was super tired, sleepy, and I didn't want to be, And and this is my memory of it. I don't know what all went into this, but I had this experience, which I'm relating right now, that I said silently in my head. I was speaking to God. And I don't know what words I said, but I said, "Wake me up." It was sort of a prayer, but it was also sort of a command. I wasn't commanding exactly, but I said, "Wake me up. I want to be awake." And an instant later, I was wide awake. That grabbed my attention without, just like flipping a switch. I was really sleepy and having trouble keeping my eyes open. And an instant later, I was wide awake. And it's sort of like the way I didn't say this at the time. It was sort of like, wow, that's cool. What's that about? I mean, it really grabbed my attention. Anyway, that's a story.
I give you a lot of credit for, at 15, having the awareness to do that and to think that, let me just throw this out into the universe. Let me see what comes back. It was almost like an experiment, I would think.
Yeah, well, yes, it was, and I don't remember exactly whether it was 15 or 16 but it was 17, 14, somewhere in there in mid-adolescence, and I don't know where that came from, but I also accept that it happened. I didn't even talk about this for years. I've recently started mentioning this, but I didn't that later that day explain this to my father and mother, or even my brother who was sitting beside me. And so I don't know exactly how that came, but I know that it happened.
I got you on that, and it's the awareness. I had a situation over the weekend. I have an old Jeep, 25 years old. I just use it just to tool around, go kayaking or whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm part of a men's group, and we went to help a senior family. The couple was in a car accident. The yard has, just overgrown. We went there, cleaned everything up for them. I'm driving back, and I'm in the middle of a major intersection with this Jeep. It's been running great, no problem. It stalls. And now I'm in the cars are beeping. I'm blocking in the middle of everywhere. And I tried to restart it like 15 times. Nothing's happening. And Jeffrey, I said a prayer. I
Hmm.
said, whoever, if you can hear me, please get this vehicle started. I'm 2 miles from home. Just get it home. We'll figure out what it is. I don't want to inconvenience other people. I feel, and not that I need, payback, but, I had the Jeep out today to help others. Like, can you help me now, please? I threw positive energy into it, clicked it over 3 more times, boom, starts up, went on my way, got it home. Everything was fine. I think maybe it was just hot. Like I opened up the hood and it was woof, like no gauges didn't indicate, overheating or anything like that. I think it was just hot, but it was right after throwing out a prayer. Whatever you want to define what a prayer is, but it started.
Exactly. And I think that's really cool. And I really believe in things that way. And I also don't feel the need to, and you're bringing this up. I don't feel the need to nail it down a precise explanation, whether it was just hot and I or whatever. But you spoke to whatever.
I did.
You spoke to the universe, and and it was a sincerely felt speaking, and there was a need in a way, and because from a larger perspective, just beyond you, there was a need for you to not be in the and the Jeep to be in the middle of the road, and so it affected other people.
And also my safety because
Yes.
I'm there. I got my flashers on, but there's people coming up really fast. It's not a good. And I called one of the men from the group. I'm like, we have a problem, and he was going to come down and try and let's push it over to the side of the road. Even that would have been a little dangerous and dicey.
Mhm.
And yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter why it wasn't starting. Could be debris in the fuel line. I'm not a car guy. I don't even know. But it was at that moment, and it was a genuine, please help me out here. Just for no other reason. Let's get it off. Get it over to the side of the road. Let it run for a minute, 10 seconds. Just get it off the road. But I guess, you realize the power of prayer.
Yeah.
And what is prayer? A positive vibration, right?
Mhm.
Setting positivity up.
And yeah, and we can say frequently it's an art a specific, well, it can be less non-specific, but a specific expression, articulation of some need.
Mm.
Uh, this and yeah, and some people say you could say a communion, a communion with something larger, something greater. If we want to distinguish between um, prayer and meditation,
Mm.
it is been said, and some people say that um, meditation is prayer is you talk and God listens, or the divine listens, the universe. The meditation is the opposite, is the divine, the universe is talking, you are listening. And that's just one, I mean, it's
Interesting. Because,
simplified. Yeah.
a lot of times it's said that when you meditate, you're listening to yourself. You're finally connecting with yourself. But are you really? And that's, the point you bring up, and also where does the universe, what is the universe? There's a belief that it starts within. You put it out. You are the universe. I'm looking at the clock. We're out of time. That was like just rocketed by. Amazing. Jeffrey, I know this, a little heavy for some, but just understanding how they can move their lives forward. And there's lots more that we'll be talking about. What's the best way to find you? Somebody has questions either on the psychotherapy side, the life coach side. How do we find you?
My website is a good place, and it is www.psychotherapist, jeffreystarbuck.com, and that's JEFFREYSTARBUCK.com. And it is being upgraded now, and and so if you go, check out the current version, but it'll be a little bit improved version in a week or two.
Sure.
But that's a good way to reach me. Yeah, and there's information about my practice and so on.
And a lot of good insight on there too. You got a great blog with some thought-provoking insight as well. And I just want to reiterate Jeffrey Starbuck, no S, .com. Starbuck is your real name?
Yes, it is.
Cool.
It is. And I had the name first.
Right. I think Starbucks has been around since like the mid 1960s or somewhere around there, maybe a little bit before.
It was later. I think it was 80s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yes, it's Starbuck and not. There's only one S, and it's at the beginning. There's no S at the end. But thank you.
Thank you for being here today and all the insight. And again, lots to talk about next time we get together. Looking forward.
Yes.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.